Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Miller, and I get to lead the team here at the United Way of Skagit County. And I am so excited to share a conversation that we're going to have with Dr. Miriam Mickelson, one of our new board members here at the United Way. So, Dr. Mickelson, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Great, great. Well, hey, one of my very first questions that I love to ask is, we talked about this a little bit before, but everyone that knows you loves you, and that's not uncommon in our community. But I think what is a little bit uncommon is that people really know the good work that you do, but they might not know kind of what it took to get you here. And so one of my favorite questions is, where did you grow up and what was that like?
Yeah. So I grew up in a very different world, I would say. I grew up in the Philippines. I was born and raised there. I moved to the US when I was about 22 years old, and I grew up in poverty in the Philippines. And I'll unpack that because to the Western world, poverty in a developing country is very different from poverty here. So growing up in poverty for me meant not really having enough food to eat and being, I don't want to say saddled, but that's how it felt like as a young child, being saddled with so many chores so that I had to contribute to the family and, just the running of things in the household and also contribute to the family's meager income. And so as a young child, I had so many chores that I felt kept me from living life as just a child. So not much time for play. I would go to school, and during my free time, I would wash clothes by hand in an open well. I'd carry buckets of water from that well, walk about a mile back to the house. I would babysit my younger siblings. I would gather firewood. We cook outside. We didn't have, the same amenities that we enjoy here in America. So I had to gather firewood. I had, I just had so many chores. And when I was about 7 years old, I started to help my family make ends meet. And so I would sell, I would say, the equivalent of a bottled water, but it wasn't really, it was packaged so differently. It was very crude, but it was water. I would sell water at cockfights every Sunday, starting at about 7, and stand up to drunken gamblers who wanted to walk away without paying. And so it was about 12 years old when I decided that I really could not live that kind of life forever. I was not lacking in love, but a very difficult life. And so about 12 years old, I thought, okay, I have to get out. And no money, obviously, no connections, no network. So the only thing that I thought I had for me was education. And so I thought if I invested my time and my energy and my education, and if I could find a way to go to college, then maybe I can get out of poverty and then help my family as well. And so I would so then I was in high school. I'll share this very brief anecdote. When I was in high school, I thought, okay, how can I get to college? And when I apply for jobs, what would make me stand out? My parents, they barely graduated from high school, couldn't really give me good advice. They knew nothing about the education system, higher ed in the Philippines. So I thought, well, if I tried to learn to speak American English, maybe that will help me. And so I would go to a rich neighbor's house, had TV, and I would go on Saturday night and I would watch one of the very few American shows available in my village. And that was MacGyver. And at that time we had electricity. When I was born, we didn't have electricity. And for the longest time, we had no solar system. So watching TV was such a luxury, but I wasn't really there to be entertained. I was there to learn to speak English, and it was MacGyver.
Right. Well, so you can speak English and also like fix everything in the world with duct tape and baling wire, right?
I wish I could say that, but I really was not paying
You're
attention to,
you were there for the language, right? Yeah,
yeah,
not for the
I was
plot.
just really focused on
That's
MacGyver is my language tutor. And
yeah.
the things that he does on the side, that's great. It makes the show entertaining, but I'm here to learn English. And so when I went to college, I spoke with a little bit of an American accent, and people would ask, "Oh, have you ever been to America?" I was like, "Oh, never been."
Yeah.
I don't know what America's like, but I was able to go to college and was the first person in my family to graduate from college. And then I met my husband, who was in the military. He was in the Air Force, was stationed in the Philippines, and I moved to the US at age 22. And I started my career in education here as a substitute teacher, and then I taught English, high school English at Lakes High School in the Lakewood, Tacoma area.
Mhm.
And then I did that for about 4 years, got my national board certification, and then was tapped to be an instructional coach and help my fellow teachers. And so I did that for a little bit. And then I went into administration, and there's like one big story there too, but suffice it to say, I got my principal credentials, moved from the Clover Park School District to the Lake Washington School District, night and day when we talk about student demographics. Very
Right.
high poverty rate in the at Lakes High School, Clover Park, and then I went to Lake Washington. Free and reduced lunch rate was about 9%.
Yeah.
About 70%. So that was a little bit of a culture shock for me. I had to adjust, but I was there for a little bit as associate principal, and then I went to the Edmond School District. I was a high school principal there, and then I went to Snohomish, executive director of teaching and learning, and now I'm here in Sedro-Woolley.
You worked your way north. I love it.
Yes,
Yeah.
eventually made it up here.
That's great. Well, tell you what, Bellingham, and we're not gonna let you go any further north. So you're don't Bellingham, you're out of luck. Linden, don't even think about it. All right. That's
Yeah.
great. Well, what a fantastic story. I mean, it is it's such a testament to your persistence, right? To have a vision. And you mentioned this, but how did you navigate that? And you mentioned your parents didn't have a lot, and they loved you, of course. But when it came terms to navigating your next steps, what were some of your, I mean, it's I'm seeing your values in there, but tactically, what the courage? Help me understand how it is that you ended up pulling the trigger, because it doesn't sound like it wasn't one of these where you lived at home. I mean, you had to separate, right? And so that separation seems to be a theme where you're willing to separate from what it might be comfortable to where it is that you want to someday be. How does that work for you?
That's a really good question. When I reflect on it, I thought, was it just out of desperation that I managed to get out? Like life was so hard that I was just willing to do anything. Like the alternative has got to be better than this. But I think I actually have to give my parents credit as well, particularly my dad, because even though they were not well educated themselves, my dad always would talk to me as if college was just an eventuality. It
Mhm.
wasn't like, if you go to college, could you go to college? Should you go to college? I think that he also knew that education was my ticket out of poverty. And in his small way, he instilled in me that college was a very valid option. So I remember we would have a conversation when I was in second grade, and he would ask me how was school, and are you learning the things that you love to learn? Because when you go to college, so it was always when you go to college. And at that time, I didn't really ask him like, why do you talk like I am supposed to go to college when we don't have a lot of money? I just thought, okay, if my dad says so, then it's got to be true. And so I think subliminally, I believed that I was college material and that I was destined for that kind of a life as well, even though we didn't have very much. And then from there, I think I just had the wherewithal to sort of understand what needed to happen. And I was not embarrassed or shy to be proactive, to take initiative. One very small, short anecdote. When I was in second grade, I really wanted to read a lot of books. I learned to read in first grade, and in the Philippines, we had like one book that we had to take turns taking home, to learn how to read. And so I did learn to read in first grade, and now I was hungry in second grade. Like I wanted to read more books, but there were no books for me to take home. And so, but in my elementary school, we had a very small library. And so I went to the teacher librarian one day after school, and I tried to strike a bargain with her. I said, hey, I would love to clean the library, dust the library, organize the books, and in exchange, would you allow me to take books home so I could read? Because the library was so small, and if we checked out books, there would be nothing left. And so we were not allowed to check out books. If you wanted to read, you have to come stay in the library and just read. But I couldn't do that because I had to go back to my chores. I had to go home to my chores. So I went and I told her, yeah, I'm willing to clean the library if you would just let me take the books, even for just one night, in exchange. And she said, sure thing. And so I did that, tried to do a very good job, tried to be very thorough. And when I was done, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, she said, hey, come here. She took me to one corner in the library and pointed to a pile of books. And it was sort of like off limits. I wasn't allowed to go and clean there, but she took me there and she said, grab as many books as you like, take as many books as you like. And here's the best thing, you don't have to return them. They're yours. I was so happy, Andrew.
Oh, wow.
The books smelled so musty. I stacked them up all the way to my chin. And in the Philippines, we didn't have a car. And
Yeah.
I would walk home. I didn't care that I couldn't see where I was going because, the books was all the way here. But the book smelled so musty because they were hand-me-downs from the US. They were printed in the 1940s, and they became my gem, my precious treasures.
Yeah.
And so that kind of experience was what I had to sort of like seek out so I could reach my goals.
Oh, what an incredible early experience. Just and I don't use the word reward, but a consequence for really creative ambition. I mean, by any other term, you like, and there's a theme there, right? And so when you write your autobiography, you can credit it is the creative ambition, right? And I think that's so interesting because as you've been talking, it's like, okay, get creative. Maybe it hasn't been done before, or it's been done before, but not by you and not in this situation. And as we expose ourselves to more ideas, aka the books we read, the shows we watch, the people that we associate with, we're able to amalgamate them and then just turn them into something new, something different. And when but it has to be combined with that ambition, right? It's not just dusting for the sake of dusting. Oh, there's somebody over there that looks like they need help. I appreciate. My OCD suggests that the book should be just certain ordered. Like, no, you got a very specific outcome that you're looking for, and you're willing to send it and try. And I think that is just so cool, right? To have that story, and more than a story, just to have that be really kind of foundational to the way that what worked for you, because it might not have, right? And I'm sure there are things that you tried that didn't work, right? And yet you're able to continue to move forward. That's
Yeah, absolutely. In community, having people there, because you ask, how did I navigate, tactically? Like if my parents didn't know how the college system worked, so how did I manage? So I reach out to some neighbors. I had a very kind neighbor who was a teacher, and we lived in the village about 2 hours away from the city, and my parents didn't really know, even how to navigate that, like driving to the city, not driving, taking a bus to the city, and
right.
when you get there, going from point A to point B. So it was my neighbor teacher who took me to the university and helped me enroll because my parents knew nothing about that. So you lean on community, you lean on people as well who are there to, willing to help you out. You have to just be comfortable with asking questions and saying, I need help. I need somebody to take me to the city so I could enroll.
Right. No, and
Interesting.
that's to have that experience, and then now to be in the position that you're in, to bring those shared experiences to the entire district, right? To be able to say with great authenticity, right? The value of having both community and also educators, right? And that's almost too sterile of a word, right? And honestly, I've had so many, but they're these mentors, like, which is also falls short in terms of where there are these people in our educational lives who take an interest in our success. And I think that is something that I have seen that we do very well in Skagit County. There's not a high school, and I went to Mount Vernon, my kids go to Burlington, I have great friends in Sedro, Anacortes, you name it, right? We have the sense of community where we have these educators who take a special interest in students that changes lives. How does that work in Sedro-Woolley? What's going on? Like, because since you know that's so important, but also you can't put that in a job description. You can't. So what's your approach to that? As an administrator.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. My experiences have shaped the way I lead. They have shaped my vision and my drive. And I would say I'd like to say I have grit. You have to have grit and persistence and perseverance because the job is very hard. And so to me, being an educational leader is not just a job. To me, it's a life calling. This is my purpose in life. And I got out of poverty because of education. And so I'm here and this position allows me to give back. And I feel like this job allows me to inspire and encourage and motivate students who may feel like they're caught in a morass of present circumstances. They can't get out, like there's no hope for them. And so I find a way to connect with students. And it's a little bit harder when you're at this level because you're not as close to the student, but you find a way. And I can name in a school district of 4,200 students, I can name students who I have personal connection with. And that is one of the things that fuels me as a superintendent. It's what encourages me, but that's an understatement. What motivates me to come to work every day is that I have an opportunity to, through my life experiences, help students understand that their life is full of beautiful possibilities and that education will allow them to reach their goals. So that definitely is a driving force for me. And in Sedro-Woolley, our theme, I've been here for 4 years. So the past 4 years, our theme has been stronger together. And I so believe in that I don't see that necessarily as changing. You see school districts every year, they have a different theme. I'd like to stick with stronger together because it really underpins everything that we do. We can have the most hardworking educators in the world, but if it's just us doing the educating, we're not going to have any hope of really reaching all of our students. So stronger together is so important to us. This year, I started fleshing it out a little bit. So the past 3 years, it has been stronger together. This year, it's stronger together. What does that mean? It means that we build bridges with kindness. We don't build walls, we build bridges. And that's how you promote community. And so I really believe in that. I mentioned earlier that one of the reasons why I was able to get out of such a poverty-stricken life was because there were people in my life who invested in me, who believed in me, and who made time for me. And so that is very important to me as well as a leader. And to me, education is all about leveling the playing field. It is education, public education is the enabler of the American dream. It is society's great equalizer. And this political time, I think that there's much scrutiny on public education. What are you teaching students, and are you promoting this particular belief, this ideology? Education in Sedro-Woolley is making sure that all of our students have the knowledge and the skills that they need for their future so that they can become contributing members of society, so that they can reach their goals. There's no hidden agenda. It's just whoever you are, whatever you come from, regardless of your circumstances, your background, you are in Sedro-Woolley School District, therefore you are our student, and we will do everything that we can so that you learn what you need to learn for your future.
And so I love that. Now, help me understand how it is that we organize public education, right? And so, I mean, I think a lot of people would say, well, you know, my experience is that I went to school and I might have voted for a school board member once upon a time, but isn't that kind of like just a homeowners association, you know, like level, like I think people would be surprised to know that, you know, in many cases in Washington State, it's a constitutional mandate in our state that is governed really at OSPI all the way down to what makes it into either the whiteboard or the homework assignments. Can you walk us through how, I mean, because there's requirements, people hear things like requirements and you know, Supreme Court rulings that say that we should be spending more money on this. And I think that it's so overwhelming for people who don't necessarily live in this space. And so can you kind of walk us through just the structure of public education and then also your experiences getting to be the head coach and quarterback also of how that works in Sedro-Woolley?
Yeah, it really is. As an organization, school districts are dynamic and vibrant and complex to lead and navigate. So you have your students at the very center of that, and you have the classroom teachers closest to the students and the paraeducators. They support the students in the classroom. And then you have your building administrators, you have support staff, secretaries, custodians, bus drivers, each playing a crucial role for this organization to deliver the services that we need to deliver to our students. So you have the building level, you have your administrators there, and then you step out of that and you have the district office and all of the different departments, human resources, teaching and learning, business services, food service, transportation department, all supporting the mission and the work that's happening in the buildings. And so because Sedro-Woolley is not very big as a school district, at the district office, we don't have a very big we don't have a big cabinet. It's just myself and my assistant superintendent, who really is, he oversees teaching and learning. So in other places, an assistant superintendent or a deputy is sort of like the right hand to the superintendent, and the superintendent delegates much of his or her responsibilities to the deputy or assistant soup. That's not really how it works for us. Brian Isaacson, our assistant soup, he is just focused on teaching and learning, but he has the title of assistant superintendent. So in my absence, somebody has to run the ship, right? And so it's him. And then we have HR, executive director, we have business executive director, which this year I don't have a CFO.
Right.
That's another challenge. Yeah, we're contracting with Puget Sound ESC. And then we have our executive director for special services overseeing special education and multi-language learner. And then I report to the school board. The school board holds me accountable, 5 people on the school board, like you said, publicly elected officials. And so I meet with them regularly, and they also meet twice a month publicly. And the governance of the board and the way they communicate, the method by which they communicate, and so many others, interactions with one another, with the community, governed by OPMA, Open Public Meetings Act. So we have to be very careful about quorum and the things that they discuss. And then many of the rules and the guidelines and the laws that we have to abide by, they come from the state. So the OSBI, Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, is the primary state agency that governs what we do based on what comes down as a legislative mandate. So there are times when the community may wonder, why is the school district doing A? Well, it may not be because we wanted to do necessarily item A. We're legislatively mandated to do item A, and so we have to do it. And I think that you probably heard of, debates out there about certain topics, but we have to follow the law, and we have to set aside how we feel about some of the social issues or whatever is being debated nationally, and just really follow the law. And we have the obligation as public educators to be apolitical. We have the obligation to, when we are teaching controversial topics, for example, we have to make sure that that is connected to the lesson and the learning standard. And when we discuss controversial topics, we have to present multiple viewpoints, multiple perspectives, and allow our students to come to a conclusion on their own, as opposed to imposing how we feel or what we believe.
Right. Oh, fabulous. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there, and I'm really hoping that people, will spend some time with that whole idea that at the school district, because it's state funded, right? And this is one of the great truths of government, is that when you take the coin, you sing the song, right? And so whereas Olympia, our legislature decides how much money and where that money is to go, they also get to largely decide what is taught. And then that the service delivery level, then that's where it gets to be modified in as much as is permissible. And I think that is where we have creative elected officials, right? And that's that connection where you can say, as a superintendent, you have got to maintain both the standard as it comes down, and also be that advocate for your team at the district, for all of everyone that you mentioned, right? To be able to say, okay, we may or may not agree, but whereas the good order and function of a school district or a public education system in a state, this is what we need to do. And I think, at least in my experience, much of the friction that I see or hear is just because of misunderstanding, right? Even at the school board level, you may have a board member that comes in there and says, we're not going to do this. And it's like, great. You know how many bake sales you're going to have to do to make up for the money that, or it's just against the law. It's like, I'm not going to jail for you or anybody just because you don't like it, right? And this is really largely these are the tensions that you live with, right? Yeah. I mean, the level of service delivery that is expected, and I'll say that, that we have come to expect from our schools, it is remarkable. I mean, from social services to criminal justice to public health, all of the above that people turn to the school district. What is that like as you sit there at your desk and say, what else can be expected of me and my team?
Oh my gosh. You really have to love what you do and lead with conviction to have longevity, because oh my gosh, I don't even have the words to describe it, but different expectations from different people, and some of the expectations are not necessarily rooted in what's practical, what's feasible. It's just, I believe in this and I'm so passionate about this. And so I expect the school district then to do this because I'm invested and I'm a taxpayer and this and that. And so, this as a leader, you can never make a decision. I don't like to use absolutes, but in this particular instance, I believe that this is true. You can never make a decision and expect everybody to be happy. Sure. You just can't.
Yeah. We're too complex as humans to.
Oh, I know, absolutely. And as a leader, like sitting on this chair, I am privy to so much information, and I have time to reflect and weigh things to make the best decision on behalf of the district within, you know, the legislative parameters and all of that. And people on the outside, they see a sliver, they see the
Right.
tip of the iceberg, and then, you know, they have conclusions or they have ideas as to how the decision should have been made or what the decision should have been made. And that can weigh you down, because
Right.
these days, especially, people are not shy about letting you know that they're critical of, you know, the decisions that you've made. And I don't know, Andrew, but unfortunately, the civility and the dialogue and the discussion, not quite there. And so people are not only shy about letting their thoughts known, but some are not, they're not the kindest in the way that they approach a situation, and that can really weigh you down.
Yeah.
You learn to have very thick skin and broad shoulders to be able to carry and, you know, absorb all of these things. But at the end of the day, you're only human. And
That's right.
so, yeah, you just really have to rest on your conviction that, like I said earlier, this is my life calling. And as hard as it is, I believe that there is purpose and value in what I do. And so I am going to do my very best to navigate all of the expectations. And then you, as much as possible, you have a conversation. And most of the time, when you sit down and you really listen and you offer an alternative perspective, most of the time people are understanding. They go, ah, okay, I see now where there were maybe gaps in my initial thinking. There are still a few who it doesn't matter what you say. They
Right.
believe what they believe. But yeah, you just have to be really grounded in why you're here.
When you hit the nail on the head, that's that leadership aspect, right? Where when people come in, I see the same thing. I've lived through many and varied experiences like that, where for me, it just, I've just gone to saying, you know, there's a healthy level of criticism and there's an unhealthy. And I feel like you're tipping into unhealthy. And since you want this to be successful, you know, and the other is they will put on my gravestone, here lies Andrew Miller. He was constructively discontent, right? And that's like, Andrew, can't you just leave it alone? But no, I am disruptive because and it's not because I don't care. It's the opposite, because I care deeply. And then but it has to be constructive. And that's another one of my favorite words in navigating things, that there's constructive and destructive. And if you just want to tear things down, there's a place for that. And it's not in this room, and it's not talking, you know, and because we're about building and you're about building. And I think there is so much light and truth when you come in with that and when you have that right energy. But you're absolutely right. That enthusiasm meter, right? So once it's just like kind of death by 1,000 cuts when you're just constantly up against those people. But well, thank you for fighting that good fight for all of us, and especially for the kids here in Sedro-Woolley. So let's talk about community and the United Way. Now, like I said, I reached out and said, we're doing a board rebuild here, and we really wanted to bring in people with your enthusiasm and experience, you know, and position. So what is it about the United Way now or in the past? Why the United Way? Why now? You are a woman in high demand because of everything we've discussed here, and so we definitely feel very fortunate to have you join our team here. Talk to me a little bit about United Way.
Yeah, since since my teaching days, I've heard of and worked with indirectly United Way. I remember staff meetings, hearing presentations from teachers themselves who are big believers in United Way. And so I was not very directly involved, but I would contribute in the past. And that was my first introduction to United Way and the great work that United Way was doing. And so to me, it's just really giving back to the community. I consider my job as, like I said, it's not really a job. It's a life calling, and I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to give back to the community. But I also want to branch out and expand and be a part of an organization that also believes very very much in giving back to the community. And that's really what United Way stands for, in my opinion. And here in Skagit County, the projects that you told me about, they resonate with me. The Imagination Library, and education, not a surprise.
Yeah.
We believe in literacy. It's so foundational. So the diaper bank, even the financial project,
Right.
so you're just doing a lot of great work. And so I just feel very privileged to be a part of the organization and contribute in whatever way I can as a board member. I have much to learn, of course, but
Well, thank you so much. We are so excited. We're really I think, at a pivotal point here in our development arc. United Way's been around for a really long time, but United Ways that are quote unquote doing it right are finding needs in the community. And there's no greater need in our community than meeting kids where they're at and making sure that they have as optimal of an environment as we can create. Right. I think this is as friends and neighbors, as community members and citizens, I posit saying we owe, but we all benefit when we have supportive environments and structures around kids, because high functioning kids become higher functioning and contributing members of our society, as you mentioned before. And I'm so grateful for this time that we've had to spend to discuss this. We call these impact chats. Our podcast is called Impact Chat. And this has really been impactful. I've learned a lot about you and the school district, and it really is encouraging to know that our community is attracting leaders like you. And we'll finish on this, but is there an aspect of being here in Skagit County or in Sedro-Woolley that really kind of puts you over the edge, or that you would consider remarkable as you talk to your friends around the world about what it is about to live and work and to be here? What comes to mind for you?
yeah, there's so many things. If I were to name all of them, we'd be here for a long time. So I'll just name a few. I'll start with one. I think you can relate to this. Um, Gateway of the North Cascades.
Yeah.
I am an avid hiker. That's
Yeah.
how I de-stress. I like to go hike, hiking.
American Alps.
I know, and we're so like, it's like, oh gosh, there are so many hiking trails here.
Yeah.
And so we live in such a beautiful, beautiful area. And so when I was thinking about applying for this position, that was one of the selling points, because prior to coming here, I hardly hiked in this area because it was just too far. So there's that. And then just the people too. In fact, one of the reasons why I thought I should commit, or I wanted to commit to United Way, is just the passion that people approach the work with. And I feel like that is universal in Skagit County. There's so much heart, and maybe because in Sedro-Woolley we're a smaller community compared to places like in King County, for example, that you get to know people and you see that there's so much passion and selflessness, despite all of the negative that we hear.
Yes. We're not without challenge, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So the beauty of the place, the heart of the community, the solidarity, I would say those are just a couple of things that come to mind when we talk about how outstanding and remarkable Skagit County is.
Ditto all of that. Well said. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. This has been just a fantastic conversation. Miriam, thank you for taking the time to unpack some of these things and help us, everyone, to get to know you a little bit better, and to support you and the good work that you do here at the Sedro-Woolley School District. I'm Andrew Miller, and this has been a United Way of Skagit County Impact Chat. Hope you enjoy your day. Thanks.